30 Sinister Secrets About Jesus Revealed. Terrifying truths that will haunt your soul forever. The letter slipped through the mailbox, its jagged edges promising hidden horrors. Sarah, a weary waitress and single mother in Maplewood, barely caught a breath before she tore it open. The type screamed. It leaned into the shadows, each word like a dagger. 30 Sinister Secrets About Jesus Revealed. Fear coiled tight in her chest, a palpable entity ready to suffocate her in the dim light of the kitchen. Her heart raced, abandoning any calm as if a predator lurked just beyond the thin walls of her home, waiting to pounce. Oddly echoed whispers filled the room as she read. The terrors that will haunt your soul forever. She stumbled back, cold sweat prickling her skin. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting the shadow of Pastor Jonathan, the captivating figure weaving his spell over the townsfolk, to emerge from the darkness. Under the spell of his magnetic sermon, her friends had abandoned their skepticism. Embracing the bewitchment, he presented with a smile that seemed more sinister with each passing day. Nights bled into each other, the hum of the diner filling her mind while she served fries and coffee. But behind the smiling faces of patrons lay an undercurrent of dread. The further she got from that letter, the more they clawed at her thoughts. Shadows deepened in corners she hadn't noticed before. The laughter of her children, innocent and delightful, now echoed back to her, tainted with an urgency to protect them. What had she brought them into? As the sun dipped, diving beneath the horizon, she felt manic energy pulse through her veins during those long shifts. It was impossible to ignore the letters that came nightly. Each warned of a cult cloaked in sheer faith, led by a pastor holding a knife, ready to sever communities' ties of trust. The handwriting, so eerily familiar, tickled at her memory. Was it one of the neighbors? A friend, smiling at her over coffee just this morning? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A deafening silence built like weight in her ears. There was something unnerving about the friendly smiles of those around her, now twisted in shadow. She peered through her window into the night, whispering prayers for protection, feeling eyes on her every move. What was happening to her little haven? The sense of paranoia wrapped around her like a blanket, pulling tighter until she could scarcely breathe. A text buzzed ominously, snapping her from her thoughts. A request to meet in the park labeled urgent. Something inside screamed to flee, to grab her children and run, but curiosity held her tethered to the spot. At midnight, the park lay coated in darkness, its usual cheer obscured. She drove there, fighting the crawling unease deep in her guts. The laughter of children, the chatter of neighbors gone. In its place, a hushed anticipation as she approached one shadowy figure, heart pounding. Pastor Jonathan stood, his voice dripping with an unsettling warmth. You think you can save your children? Who would believe you? His predatory glare scraped against her resolve, hinting at the horrors lurking beneath his charm. Terror sliced through the air as the truth unfurled like a cruel joke. This was not just a battle for trust, it was a desperate struggle to save her very soul in a world spiraling deeper into darkness. The thought clawed at her. The closer she got to uncovering the secrets, the more trapped she felt. Could she ever escape? The gut-wrenching fear settled. Something far worse awaited in the shadows, lurking just out of sight. The park was a different world at this hour. Shadows danced like phantoms amongst the trees, each rustle of leaves a taunt, each flicker of the streetlight a reminder of the terror lurking just outside the light. Sarah's pulse quickened, a furious drumbeat against her ribs. She gripped the steering wheel hard enough that her knuckles turned white. What was she doing here? Pastor Jonathan's eyes gleamed with an unnatural intensity when he stepped closer. The darkness creeped behind him like a living entity. You shouldn't have come, Sarah, he murmured, voice smooth yet jagged, like glass hidden beneath silk. You're not ready for what lies beneath the surface. Her stomach twisted at his words, and an absurd urge to laugh bubbled up. It was ridiculous, right? She was a mother, not an unwitting maid in some horror tale. But then she saw the other figures slinking out of the shadows, faces partially hidden, laughter echoing like broken glass. They were familiar, so familiar. Is that Jess? Mark? Her voice cracked as recognition hit, each name sending ripples of betrayal through her heart. Friends turned into empty shells, smiles stripped away. They stood alongside Jonathan, eyes gleaming with fanaticism, as if caught in a trance. What happened to you? Join us. They chimed, voices like wind through a graveyard, and she felt her breath catch in her throat. A visceral urge to flee surged within her, but her feet refused to budge. The park felt alive, a creature wrapping its limbs around her, squeezing tighter. She could almost hear the echoing whispers of the letters in her head. What was this madness? Jonathan stepped forward, extending a hand. You're so close to enlightenment, Sarah. We can show you the truth. There was something terrifically seductive in his voice. It wrapped around her like fog. Had she really been blind all this time? Could the townsfolk really be involved in something more sinister? Something flickered in the periphery, a shadow darting within the trees. Panic exploded in her chest, the need to protect her children screaming in the back of her mind. They're not safe. You have to let them go. The desperation hung between them, tangible as the chill in the air. No one is safe unless they embrace the darkness, he said, his grin widening, exposing teeth too sharp for comfort. What's in the shadows, it's far more inviting than the light. A sick laughter erupted from the group. Their eyes shifted from hopeful to hungry. They were desperate in their zeal, like vultures where she was standing. Each beat of her heart reverberated through her body, a countdown to the inevitable. Suddenly, the park came alive with echoes. The sounds of chanting resonated, a hymn to some forsaken entity. Join us, they yelled, and the ground trembled slightly beneath her. Trees swayed aggressively, branches clawing at the night sky like hands reaching from the grave. That it was overwhelming. The fear twisted into something deeper as she stumbled backward, instinct overriding curiosity. She didn't have a choice. Without breaking her gaze from the pastor, she ran past the chanting, the disturbing warmth that fell over her like a blanket threatening to engulf her whole. The darkness chased her down the street, shadows creeping just at her heels, but a new resolve surged in her. She had to get home. She had to protect her children. But what awaited her there? What horror lingered in the corners of her house since she'd been marked by the pastor's coven? As she approached the front door, the stark reality crashed down. A sickening question tore through her, louder than the whispers swarming in her brain. What if the shadows of her own home had already been claimed? She flung the door open, and her heart lurched at what she could hear inside. A low, rhythmic tapping echoed through the house, a sinister heartbeat that matched her racing pulse. The living room was dimly lit, curtains drawn tight, as if trying to shut out the darkness invading from the outside world. An unsettling weight hung in the air, thick as fog, pressing against her skin. Mom. A small voice emerged from the shadows. It was Emma, her daughter, peeking cautiously from behind the couch. Her eyes glimmered with fear, wide and bright, like saucers in the dark. Relief surged through Sarah, yet curiosity and dread tightened in her throat. Emma, are you okay? Where's your brother? Sarah rushed to her, her heart pounding. The sweet innocence of her daughter felt like a fragile shield against the growing malevolence that felt all too close. He's in the room, Mom. But he won't come out. He said something about the man in the park. Emma's voice trembled, the words quaking like dry leaves in an autumn wind. The man? Is it Pastor Jonathan? The thought sent icy fingers crawling down her spine. Emma nodded, her expression grave. He said he wants us. He wants to show us the truth. Sarah's mind raced. The truth? The truth they believed in the park? That was a deception, a dark lure to drag them into the shadows. Stay here, okay? I need to find your brother. As she made her way down the dark hallway, each step felt like walking on glass, afraid to make even one wrong move. The stillness was jarring, thick and unnatural, as if even the walls were holding their breath. She reached the door to Ben's room and hesitated, the handle cold under her fingers. Ben? She called, voice low. It's Mom. Open the door. Silence. Ben. Panic snaked into her voice as she pushed the door open. The room was dark, curtains tightly shut just like the rest of the house. Ben. Her heart sank when she spotted the figure slumped against the far wall, a dark shadow draped in silence. A flicker of hope began to spark as she hurried closer. "Are you okay?" Then she froze. As her eyes adjusted, she realized the outline was wrong, too still, too quiet. "Ben?" She reached out, hesitant. Her fingers brushed against the cold fabric, and dread twisted in her gut. This wasn't her son. It was a life-sized mannequin, staring back at her with wide, hollow eyes. Her breath quickened as she jerked back, searching desperately for any sign of her child. A chilling whisper floated through the air, so faint she almost mistook it for her imagination. "Mom, help me." Ben's voice came from the closet. The plea chilled her to the bone. "Ben, I'm here. I'm coming." Sweat trickled down Sarah's back as she yanked the door open. The stark light snapped on, illuminating their shadows, revealing nothing but empty hangers and a few scattered toys. "Ben?" She felt the walls closing in, terror rising in her throat. The room felt smaller, more suffocating, and then she saw it in the corner, a dark stain pooling on the floorboards, creeping slowly toward her. It shone like liquid shadow, whispering echoes of laughter that twisted her insides. In that moment, understanding crashed over her. Her family was gone, consumed by the shadows. All the hugs and laughter had been replaced with whispers, promises of belonging deep in the void. "Join us," the horrible chant echoed, the same dreadful invitation from the park. The shadows around the house thickened, clinging to her like a smothering fog. Suddenly, behind her, the closet door creaked open wider, revealing a figure that was not quite her son. Cold dread trickled down her spine as it emerged, a pale imitation of Ben, grinning wide, eyes hollow, nothing but darkness inside. "Mom, come play." Fear surged within her, sinking deeper than the pit of her stomach. What had she unleashed? With no way to look back, dread pressed heavily against her shoulders as she rushed back down the hallway, desperate to escape that haunting voice. But as she sprinted toward the front door, she was met with cold emptiness. The house had shifted. The door was gone, vanished like her hope. And somewhere deep inside, she realized the truth. She wasn't just fighting for her children anymore, but for her very soul. "Help me, Mom." The voice behind her was more urgent now, a siren-esque call that froze her in place. Her heart raced as she turned slowly, dread creeping in. What choice did she have now? As the shadows closed in, she felt a terrifying certainty there was no escape from the darkness that had claimed her once beloved home. What if she was already too late? The air grew thick, almost electric, as Sarah stood rooted on the spot, panic flooding her senses. Her heart pounded like a war drum, each beat a reminder that she was not alone. The darkness swirled around her, whispering secrets she didn't want to hear, a cacophony of sorrow and temptation. "Mom, help me," the voice continued, more insistent now, echoing through the barren hall. A reflection of what once was. The familiar yet twisted tones of her son beckoned her, wrapping around her like a noose. She gritted her teeth, fighting against the urge to respond, to reach into that aching void. "Stay away," she shouted into the darkness, her voice trembling as she stepped backward, nearly falling into the inky blackness. The walls pulsed like flesh. Shadows writhed hungrily, tugging at her clothes, urging her to surrender to them. "Mom!" Ben's cry cut through her, sharper this time, mingling with a chorus of laughter that echoed through the halls. It was both delightful and horrifying, like the pleased sound of ghouls at a feast. The realization crashed over her like icy water. She wasn't just running from the shadows. They were luring her in, wanting her to join their terrible celebration. "Ben!" she shouted, flinging the bathroom door open as she struggled for a refuge. The small, tiled room was empty, the mirror reflecting her own fear-stricken face, whereas the shadows outside danced in triumph. Panic clawed at her throat. What was happening? Where was everyone? The fragrance from the bathroom faded into something grotesque, a mix of decay and despair. She glanced back at the hallway. The darkness snaked further in, creeping toward her like a predator. Heart racing, she spun to face the room, searching for any sign of escape. From the corner, the bathtub beckoned, filled with thick, murky water reflecting a twisted version of her own image. It undulated as if alive. A whisper curled through the air, the spectral voice dripping with malice. "Join them." Join us. At that moment, a figure stepped into the doorway. Tall, shrouded by shadows, the silhouette beckoned with a chilling familiarity. Sarah's breath caught as she squinted. The figure morphed before her eyes into an unrecognizable form, a haunting blend of her children's features smudged into one grotesque mask. Ben? Her voice held no certainty, just a quavering cry. The shape tilted its head, laughter spilling from its lips, familiar yet tainted, a sound that twisted the fabric of her heart. Come play. Mom, we're all waiting. With that, it pointed toward the inky water, fingers elongating unnaturally, causing her mind to spin. Panic surged as shadows converged behind it, swirling and coiling with dark delight. The choice was laid bare, a chilling invitation into the abyss. Sarah recoiled, instinct overtaking her. She rushed past the nightmare, bursting through the bathroom window, feeling glass shards slice her skin. It hurt, but it was a real pain, something tangible in a world so surreal. The cold air hit her, invigorating her lungs as she tumbled onto the neatly trimmed lawn outside, drenched in moonlight. But she didn't stop. She scrambled down the driveway and into the streets, choking back sobs, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. The whispers, the laughter, they trailed behind her, a wicked symphony growing faint. Then she turned around. The house loomed impossibly tall, dark windows pouring shadows as if they themselves bled. In that moment of wild desperation, a figure stood in the window, small and familiar. Ben's face formed in the glass, eyes wide, deeper than the abyss. But there was no sound. Help me, Mom. It's too late. He mouthed silently, his face falling into nothingness. A scream bubbled from her throat, raw and unchained. The night swallowed it whole. Somewhere, the shadows stirred, teasing her with promises of lost time and belonging. Turning away, Sarah fled into the night, her mind racing. She had to find them. She had to uncover the truth buried deep in the darkness. But with every step, she felt the weight of what's hidden beneath the surface, an invitation she could not ignore. Could she possibly save her children without succumbing to the darkness herself? Sarah's feet pounded against the pavement, the rhythm drowning out the laughter echoing from the house she had just escaped. Each breath came in shudders, a desperate gasp for clarity amid the chaos swirling in her mind. Where could she go? Who could help her now? The streetlights flickered like will-o'-the-wisps, casting jagged shadows that clawed at her from every angle. She stumbled into the nearest alley, seeking refuge in its obscurity. Heart racing, she pressed her back against the cold brick wall, taking a moment to catch her breath, her senses still on high alert. Please, Ben, she whispered into the night. The thought of him trapped, the possibility that she might never see him again, sent icy tendrils of dread wrapping around her heart. She squeezed her eyes shut, struggling to gather her thoughts. There had to be a way to save him. As if in response, the ground beneath her began to tremble, a soft rumble that vibrated through the air. The laughter persisted, now a warped melody seeming to rise from the very earth around her, twisting words that sent prickles of fear down her spine. Come back, join us now. Sarah's voice broke through the illusion, a void of defiance against the seductive call. She could smell the lingering rot of decay, the bittersweet perfume of something long dead, and it sent her reeling. Fumbling for her phone, she felt her hands shake uncontrollably. The screen lit up with a distorted reflection of her face, eyes wide and haunted. No signal. Panic overwhelmed her again. She stuffed the phone back into her pocket, reminding herself of her purpose. She had to find the others if there were others. If Ben was alone, then what had happened to the others? A distant sound broke the stillness, echoing along the alleyway. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Clenching her fists, she pressed further into the shadows, holding her breath as the footsteps neared. They seemed to carry an unnatural weight, heavy with expectation and dread. Just as she was about to bolt, a flash of movement caught her eye. A figure appeared at the mouth of the alley, silhouetted against the faint light reflecting off the street. Help! She called out, voice ragged. The figure paused, but no response followed. Instead, it stepped forward, revealing itself. A woman, face as pale as moonlight, and eyes that glinted like shards of ice. Sarah, she said softly, each syllable drenching the air in familiarity mixed with something darker. You shouldn't have run. They expect you back. Who are you? Sarah's heart raced, instinct pushing her to run. What do you want? Your children. The woman's smile stretched too wide, contorting her features. They're waiting for you. You could have a reunion. Just come home. The shadows behind her surged, stretching towards Sarah with hungry anticipation. In a moment of clarity, she realized this wasn't just a stranger. This was another lost soul, someone who had succumbed to the darkness once too. No, she screamed, lunging past the figure, adrenaline propelling her forward. The alley twisted, the brick walls seeming to close in, but she wouldn't stop. She burst into the night, feeling the weight of the looming presence behind her. They were coming, shadows chasing her like they were the wind, a storm eager to swallow her whole. Panic shackled her, tightening as she ran deeper into the darkness surrounding her town. But then her resolve solidified. She had to return to the house, the epicenter of this nightmare. With every breath, she could feel the call of the shadows tugging at her again, a comforting whisper in the chaos. You'll never escape, it sang. But she pushed it aside, fighting the urge to turn back, knowing the stakes were far too high. What awaited her there if she sought the truth? Would it be salvation or her ultimate doom? The street curved before her, leading back toward the house. And with each step, she felt the pulse of the darkness throbbing with intent. Yet the chilling question clawed at her mind. Had she already lost everything that mattered? And then she saw it, the silhouette of the house rising above the night, seemingly alive, awaiting her return. Would she have the strength to face the truths hidden within? Or would the shadows finally claim their prize? The moment Sarah stepped onto the familiar cracked pavement, a bone-chilling wind howled past her, echoing like a funeral dirge. The house loomed ahead, shadows flitting across the windows as if something inside were watching her with beady eyes. Heart racing, she willed her feet to take her closer, knowing that whatever waited there could be her only chance to rescue Ben, or the last thing she would ever face. As she approached the front porch, the wood creaked under her weight, a warning sound that resonated deep within her gut. Each step made her equate it with a prisoner marching toward the gallows. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the doorknob, but then desperation overpowered her instinct for self-preservation. The door swung open with a low groan, revealing the interior engulfed in darkness, punctuated only by erratic flickers of candlelight. The air was thick with a scent that merged decay with something floral, sickly sweet, and revolting. It clung to her nostrils, almost suffocating her. Ben, she called, voice echoing like a distant whisper. Nothing responded except the murmurs of the house, an almost intimate conversation among the shadows. Just need to find him, Sarah murmured, forging deeper into the heart of her nightmare. The living room was strewn with items that once belonged to her family, old toys, crumpled photos, every piece bathed in an eerie golden glow. They flickered just out of reach, distant memories beckoning her to step closer. She felt the hairs on her arms rise, cold sweat pooling at the nape of her neck. Shadows flickered in the corners, darting as if to avoid her gaze. Were they alive, aware of her presence? In that moment, another unsettling whisper broke through the silence, a low, guttural tone that echoed like voices layered on top of one another. Welcome home. Sarah stumbling backward, she crashed into an old chair, its wooden legs scraping across the floor like fingernails on a chalkboard. Heart pounding, she spun around. The shadows pressed in around her, but the voice of the woman from the alley pierced through. You belong here. It hissed, as if it could taste her fear. Leave me alone, Sarah screamed, pushing against the creeping darkness. But it wouldn't listen. The shadows drew closer, shapes weaving and stretching, whispering secrets she longed to ignore. The house groaned as if it were alive, a sentient being wrapping its cold tendrils around her mind. Join us, be one of us. With sheer determination, she tore herself from the grasp of the chaos and ran. The hallway stretched endlessly before her, each door a potential trap. Ben, she called out again, desperation clawing at her throat. But only silence wrapped around her like a shroud. Suddenly, she saw a flicker of movement through one of the doors at the end of the hall. Hope surged through her veins like a drug, and without thinking, she bolted toward it. As she flung the door open, the candlelight illuminated a room full of mirrors, all framed in warped glass that seemed to distort her very existence. In the center stood Ben, or what was left of him, eyes vacant, skin pale, caught in a terrible trance. "Help him!" a chorus of voices echoed from the mirrors. They called to her, beckoning with twisted smiles. "You must set him free!" Panic surged. The door slammed shut behind her, trapping her in the mirrored prison. She pressed her palms against the glass, her reflection staring back as the shadows danced around the surface, mocking her plight. "You cannot escape," they whispered. "He is ours now." "Sarah!" Ben's voice struggled to break through the fog, but it sounded hollow, distant, dangerously close to nothing. With each heartbeat, the walls seemed to close in, and the weight of the house bore down upon her. What sacrifice would be demanded for his freedom? The realization crashed over her like ice water. Were they willing to claim her as their own to save him? And at that moment, the reflection in the mirror shifted, and she saw it, the woman's face, smiling wickedly beside Ben, lips curled in an unholy triumph. "Join us," she hissed, eyes glinting with darkness. The choice pressed heavily on Sarah's chest. Would she abandon her own soul to save Ben, or let the shadows consume her both? A sudden crack splintered the air, and she turned to see the mirrors shatter, one by one, like glass falling from an invisible hand. With the last shards falling, the woman's laughter erupted, echoing into a cacophony of madness. What lay beyond the chaos? Redemption? Or more darkness? As the shards fell, the true fight for both their lives began. And Sarah realized this was just the beginning. What path would she take next? Would she stay and fight against the darkness, or succumb to the whispers? Shattered glass rained down like confetti, each piece catching the flickering candlelight before clattering to the floor. Sarah's breath quickened as the shriek of the glass echoed in her ears, her pulse matching the chaos. She risked a glance at Ben, now surrounded by shards that seemed to pulse with a sinister energy, life and death tangled in a fraying thread. "Ben!" she cried again, reaching for him. But her hand met only empty air, the shadows curling away from her touch. Although he stood there, motionless and cold, she felt separate from him, like a distant star untouchable in the dark sky. The laughter of the woman twisted through the air, humorless and chilling. "You've always been a part of this, dear," she proclaimed, her voice slithering around Sarah, pushing her further back into dread. "All of this, it's bound to you. You cannot resist your true calling." Sarah felt herself trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. "No, you're lying," she shouted, pressing against the wall, seeking anything solid to hold on to as chaos erupted. "Ben is not yours. He is mine." The mirrors lay in ruins, but their reflections glimmered like dark waters, distorting reality. Emotions splintered like the glass. Love and fear intertwined, but resentment clawed at her heart. She tore her eyes away, forcing herself to focus on Ben. His vacant expression stirred her stomach in knots. "Please, you have to hear me." In a heartbeat, the atmosphere shifted. The shattered shards rearranged in serpentine patterns, coiling around her, whispering malicious promises. "Find me," Sarah echoed her own voice, twisted and warped. "Set me free." Each second felt like a lifetime. She could feel the pulse of the house growing stronger, alive and watching. The walls seemed to breathe in sync with her racing heart. Desperation clawed at her throat. She had to make a choice, and she had to make it now. Suddenly, a brash wind swept through the room, snuffing the candles and plunging her into darkness. Panic surged again, thick and suffocating. She took a step back, her foot slipping on debris. "Ben, I want to leave you," she yelled, though her voice trembled. Her eyes searched for the movements in the void, the shadows writhing like snakes darting for prey. A visceral urgency rose within her. She took a breath, fighting the mounting dread crashing over her. "If you want my soul, you'll have to take it." She screamed into the abyss, summoning all her strength, intending to fight, to claim her identity. In that critical moment, the darkness coalesced around her, a heavy fog that seeped under her skin. Whispers merged, swirling patterns of hatred mingled with despair, so close she could feel their icy breath. "Join us, be part of the eternal," they urged, teeth glinting in the semblance of twisted shadows. Without thinking, Sarah dashed toward what she hoped was the way out. She could feel the malignant energy thrumming around her, sprouting fingers that reached and scraped against her skin. Each second felt like a gamble. Would their desperate need bind her forever? Or would she win this fleeting chance to reclaim Ben? As the door loomed on the horizon, she glimpsed tormented faces trapped within the walls, souls that hadn't escaped, eyes wide with terror, mouths silently pleading for release. No, she gasped, crashing into the door, pushing it open just as the shadows lunged forward, screaming with rage and fury. Light flooded back in, piercing through the darkness that tried to swallow her whole. Stumbling into the unknown hall, she turned back only to face one last revelation. The woman was still there, standing behind the scattered shards, her eyes glowing with sinister delight. "You cannot escape your fate, Sarah. We will seek you again." Heart racing, Sarah dashed down the hallway, feeling the house's intent clawing at her heels. If slavery to the darkness was the path laid out before her, could she forge a new way, one that freed both her and Ben? The terrifying laughter echoed behind her, but Sarah pressed on, refusing to look back, knowing the shadows would follow. What terrible consequence awaited her in the depths of this endless nightmare? Would she be strong enough to alter her destiny, or would the darkness claim everyone she loved? The hallway stretched endlessly, filled with a palpable dread that made Sarah's skin crawl. Light flickered above her, casting long shadows that danced menacingly along the walls. She sprinted forward, the echo of frantic footsteps pursuing her, a sinister rhythm that beat in time with her own rapid heartbeat. Each step sent waves of anxiety crashing over her, as if the very ground beneath her was alive and intent on dragging her down. "Ben," she called again, desperate for a response that never came. The weight of his silence bore down on her. It churned inside her, mixing with fear and frustration until it felt like a physical burden. She needed to find him, to wake him from this nightmare, but the darkness clung to her like a shroud, whispering doubt and despair. The walls seemed to close in, narrowing the hallway, warping the space around her. To her right, an old door creaked open, and she hesitated, curiosity battling with the instinct to flee. But a gut-wrenching sense of urgency made the choice clear. She had to know. She had to find a way to combat the darkness before it consumed everything. With a hard shove, she pushed through the door, emerging into a small, dimly lit room. Dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by a single flickering bulb that swung ominously from the ceiling. In the center of the room sat an ancient mirror, its surface cracked, distortion making the reflection of Sarah appear grotesque and twisted. The air grew cold, and the laughter of the woman echoed softly, a haunting melody weaving through the stillness. "Come closer, Sarah, you must look deeper." The voice dripped with malice. She shuddered, but something drew her forward, an irresistible urge to confront her fears, to find answers buried in the depths of her own reflection. As she stepped toward the mirror, images shifted, revealing dark scenes of her past, moments of pain, betrayal, shadows creeping into her once bright memories. The laughter grew louder, mingling with her own scream trapped within the confines of her throat. "Be part of us." The mirror jeered, its surface rippling like water disturbed by a stone. "Just give in, Sarah. Embrace your destiny." "No," she howled, slapping her hands against the glass. Her breath fogged the surface, creating a brief moment of clarity in the chaos swirling before her. Above her reflection, other faces materialized, their eyes wide with fear and hopelessness. These were the souls trapped within the very walls of the house, their screams muffled as they reached out toward her. A surge of power coursed through her veins, fueling her resistance. "I want to become one of you," she screamed, stepping back as the shadows lunged from the mirror's surface. Claws of darkness aimed to pull her into the cold abyss. In the next frantic heartbeat, she turned to escape, heart pounding, as the mirror vibrated with anger. The sounds of tortured wails filled the space as if the spirits were furious, enraged that she would dare defy them. But escape was her only thought. She darted back into the hallway, a sea of darkness crashing behind her, the tangible sense of death wheeling in like a fierce storm. But ahead, flickers of light responded to her, guiding her like a beacon. She ran through the oppressive gloom, the shadows clawing at her back, whispering temptations as she raced toward the illumination. "Join us, it's easier now." Her voice rang out, panic fueling her speed. She burst into another room, a kitchen frozen in time. The smell of decay mixed with the rusted metal old memories painted the walls with despair. Yet, amidst the blending chaos around her, a familiar figure stood motionless in the corner, the silhouette of Ben, eyes glazed, echoing the same void she had seen moments before. Fear wrapped around her heart like a vice. No, 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 she mumbled in despair, taking a hesitant step toward him. Before she could call his name, the ground trembled beneath her feet, and the shadows crept eagerly, poised to snatch him away. "Sarah," he murmured, and for an instant, a flicker of recognition sparked within. But was it really him? Or had that darkness already infected him? The decision weighed heavy within her as she reached out, love and fear clashing in her heart. Was she ready to face whatever terrible truth was about to unfold? Would she risk everything, enticing the wrath of the shadows to save him? Sarah's heart raced as she stepped closer, every instinct screaming at her to turn away. Shadows swirled around Ben, their fingers skimming his form, like tendrils of smoke eager to consume him. His vacant eyes bore no hint of recognition, yet she felt the pull of his presence, an unbreakable bond forged in love and shared memories. "Ben." She pressed forward, desperate breaths escaping her lips like prayers. As she neared him, the shadows hissed, their whispers growing louder, mingling with the crackle of something darker. "Join us, join him," a sinking feeling settled in her gut. Was the darkness already winning? In that moment of hesitation, she sensed the sinister familiarity of those spirits circling her, twisting, taunting. Fear tightened its grip around her, squeezing in time with her pulse. Sarah's voice was so faint, like a breeze carrying a forgotten melody. She could almost reach out and touch him, but the shadows recoiled, angry that she dared to intrude upon their territory. "It's too late now," she cried, shaking her head vehemently. "You're still in there. Fight it, Ben. Please." His head dipped, as if some internal battle raged behind his vacant stare. The air thickened with a terrible energy, a push and pull that made her feel as if she stood at the center of an unseen vortex. And then, as her hand brushed against his, she was hit with a wave of freezing horror. It was her reflection in his eyes, a broken woman defined only by pain and darkness. "Help me," he whispered, or at least she thought she heard him. But the shadows roared around them, drowning him out. They crawled closer, eager to consume her hope alongside him. "Ben," she screamed, the world around her exploding with rage, as if her voice tore the fabric of the shadows. She couldn't let go. Not now. Not when he needed her. In that desperate moment, she pulled him closer, her body shaking from the chill emanating from the depths of the darkness. It felt as if 1,000 hands were pushing against her, forcing her away from the warmth of his alone. "Fight it. Remember us. Remember our love." It was a plea. It was a weapon. As she held on tight, something shifted. Light flickered around them, illuminating like a beacon through the storm, and she felt a crack in the darkness, a moment of clarity. His eyes flickered, a mere spark of recognition beneath the void. "Sarah," he gasped. "Remember the mirror?" The shadows howled in fury, grasping at her ankles. Shadows of memories flickered, dark images folding into traumatic fragments of their past. A confession, a betrayal, moments that had seared through their relationship, flirting dangerously close to the truth she long avoided. "Ben, I want to let you go." She held him tighter, feeling the warmth of his skin, a tiny flame against the encroaching cold. But the shadows thrummed louder, a cacophony of rage. Her love was their greatest threat. Suddenly, Ben's face contorted, twisting with pain. "It hurts. I can't hold on, no." Panic surged within her, clawing at her throat. "You've got to fight. Remember why we're here." With a jolt, the room spun. The shadows recoiled briefly, as if recoiling from her words, only to surge forward once again, more furious than before. The walls trembled, the floor shaking beneath her as the entire house seemed to come alive with rage. "Let him go," she screamed, battling both the engulfing darkness and the suffocating fear nestled in her heart. The air crackled like static, electric dread coursing through her veins. Then came the deadening silence. The shadows paused, as if they were considering her words. And just like that, she saw it. In the depths of the confused chaos, behind all the tormented souls and shadowy claws, small flickers of light began to illuminate the darkness, a delicate dance of hope igniting against despair. But would it be enough? The shadows hissed menacingly, ready to strike once more. Would they let her claim Ben back from the brink? Or would they drag them both into the nightmare together? With her heart pounding and determination surging through her, Sarah clung to the last glimmer of light. She would fight with everything she had. The battle was just beginning. "Come back to me, Ben." And as she said it, backlit by the dark energy swirling around them, a feeling loomed larger. It was both hope and impending doom, a prelude to the final test their love would endure. What awaited them in the next confrontation? The shadows stirred ominously, revealing truths that would shake her very foundation. Was it enough to reclaim not just Ben, but her own light before it too vanished? The universe around Sarah trembled, a taut string about to break. She stood in the eye of the storm, darkness swirling around her as Ben clung to the tug of his memories. Every nerve in her body screamed for her to hold on, to fight the pull of despair threatening to consume them. "Remember, Ben," she urged, voice breaking yet unwavering. "Remember our family. All the moments we shared." The shadows writhed, angry whispers vibrating through the air, but she pressed on. "Picnics at the park, your first bike ride. Watching the stars together, you loved the stars." Her heart thundered in sync with the growing chaos, drowning out the shadows' malevolent laughter. In their chaotic dance, Ben's expression flickered, a spark of warmth ignited somewhere within those hollow eyes. "Sarah," he murmured, and for a brief moment, their connection shone like a fragile beacon amid the engulfing darkness. "The mirror we have to yes," she cried, heart doing flips. The mirror. It had to be a key, a sliver of truth within the lies wielded against them. But the shadows, sensing her hope, surged forward like ravenous wolves, a discordant roar vibrating against her skin. "Let go," she shouted into the abyss, forcing every ounce of resolve into her words. "You don't own us. We are not yours." The shadows shrieked, recoiling slightly as if her defiance stung. "I can't." Ben's voice trembled, caught between the allure of the void and the vivid memories tethering him to reality. "It's so dark." Then, unexpectedly, Sarah felt something shift in the air, a flicker of love radiating from their bond, like sunlight breaking through a heavy cloud. "Listen to me," she implored. "You're stronger than this. Fight for us. Fight for your life." With every word, a sliver of light pulsed through the shadows, illuminating Ben's face momentarily. "Sarah, think, Ben," she urged fiercely. "Think of Emma. She needs us both. We will find a way out." The shadows hesitated, confusion rippling through their grasp. "Emma," he echoed. Hesitation seeped into his tone. Did he sense the truth calling him back? Remember how we held her for the first time? Remember her laughter? Our family. Her heart raced. Could this be enough? With every ounce of emotion she could muster, she channeled the warmth of their love, praying it would pierce through the cold veil encasing him. Light coalesced around them, illuminating the space with a warmth she thought she had lost. "Yes." Ben's voice rose, clarity burning bright. "I remember." The shadows hissed, twisting violently, but before they could swallow Sarah's light, she saw it, a rift, shimmering, a possible escape shimmering behind the gloom. "Ben," she yelled, determination flooding her veins. "Hold on to me." The darkness screamed again, and for a flash, Sarah felt disoriented, almost drawn into their embrace. But with a deep breath and fierce will, she closed her eyes and focused on the bonds formed by love. "Now," she shouted, and in that instant, she surged forward, pulling him into the swirling light with all of her might as the shadows erupted into fury. Time twisted, warping as they plunged through the rift. Whispers turned into a deafening roar, and momentarily, she wondered if they would emerge together or lost among the void. Then, with a thunderous crack, they landed hard on the familiar ground of the park, night, clouds dissolving over them, a star-filled sky flooding back their senses. Sarah gasped, taking in deep gulps of fresh air. They were outside, the energy of the town vibrating like a heartbeat. She looked around. Ben, dazed but alive. Ben pulled himself up, eyes wide and frantic. Relief washed over her harder than a tidal wave. "We're outside." His bewilderment mirrored her own. Yet even outside, she could still feel the shadows swirl around them tentatively, hungry echoes lurking just out of sight. We have to go? Sarah urged, grabbing his hand. Before they come back. But as she turned toward the exit, the whispers pursued them, lingering like a curse. They took off toward the glow of the diner, the welcoming lights flickering like candlesticks in the night. This was their home, their sanctuary, a place filled with warmth, where laughter and love had taken root, where shadows were banished by shared stories, not fear. They would reclaim everything that had been taken from them. Yes, Ben said breathlessly. We can fight them, together. Hand in hand, they darted across the park as the shadows coughed and wailed behind them. But their voices faded to a whisper, succumbing to the light of their hope. And as they entered the diner, surrounded by friends and familiar faces, echoing laughter that felt natural and bright, Sarah turned and looked at Ben. We made it. Together we keep fighting. In their hearts, shadows would forever cling. Moments of doubt and fear would always ebb and flow. But this time, she knew there would always be light to chase them away. For love's battles were not fought in isolation, they flourished in unity. Forever intertwined, Sarah and Ben would rise against the darkness, forever. And with that hope blooming in their souls, they stepped into their new beginning where the laughter would drown out any sinister secrets that once threatened their peace. Now, a home built on love persisted, a beacon against the darkness whispering in the far reach of their memories. Because as long as they fought and loved, the shadows would never truly take them. So here we are, my friends. This is where the fight begins. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. Did they escape for good? What do you think lies waiting for them next time? Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.